The morning sky above New York changed from blue to black in less than 3 seconds. Maria Santos was drinking her coffee on the balcony of her apartment when the shadow fell across the city. She looked up and dropped her mug. The ceramic shattered on the concrete, but she did not hear it break. Above her, a ship hung in the air. It was not a ship like anything humans had ever built. The vessel stretched for miles across the sky, its surface dark as midnight and smooth as glass. Strange lights pulsed along its edges in patterns that hurt to look at. Maria could see her reflection in its hull, tiny and scared. All around the world, the same scene played out. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Cairo. Every major city on Earth found itself under the shadow of these impossible ships. Television broadcasts cut to emergency signals. Radio stations went silent, then crackled back to life with the same message repeating in every language on Earth. People of the third planet, we are the Black Armada. We speak for the galactic hegemony. You will listen. The voice that came from every speaker was not human. It was cold and mechanical, but underneath the translation software something alien lurked, something that had never known fear or doubt. Your species has reached the point where it can no longer be ignored. You have spread beyond your birth world. You have begun to touch the edges of space that belongs to others. This cannot continue without proper guidance. In the United Nations building, world leaders gathered in an emergency session. Outside the windows, they could see the massive ship hovering over Manhattan. Its shadow covered half the city. President Williams stared at the alien vessel and felt a chill run down his spine. We have watched your kind for some time. The voice continued. You are young and violent. You fight each other over small patches of dirt. You poison your own world. You are not ready for the galaxy as you are. But you can be taught. Secretary General Chen leaned forward in his chair. Around the table, the most powerful people on Earth sat in stunned silence. Some were pale with fear. Others looked angry. All of them knew that everything had changed forever. The galactic hegemony has brought peace to 10,000 worlds. We have ended war. We have stopped suffering. We have created order from chaos. This gift can be yours as well. The alien voice paused. In that silence, emergency sirens wailed across every city on Earth. Military bases went to high alert. Nuclear submarines surfaced in the oceans, their crews staring up at skies that were no longer empty. You have 72 of your hours to decide. Submit to the wisdom of the hegemony, and your species will find its place among the stars. Your leaders will become governors under our guidance. Your armies will serve the greater good. Your people will know peace. Admiral Torres of the United Earth Defense Force stood at the window of his command center. Outside, he could see 3 of the alien ships hanging over the Pacific Ocean. Each one was larger than his entire fleet. His hands clenched into fists as he listened to the message. Refuse, and you will be removed. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. In our long history, we have made this offer to 473 species. 473 species chose wisdom. They live now in happiness under our protection. Dr. Elizabeth Park, humanity's leading xenobiologist, sat in her laboratory at CERN. She had spent her whole life dreaming of first contact with alien life. She had imagined peaceful meetings, exchanges of knowledge, friendship between the stars. This was nothing like her dreams. The readings from her instruments showed energy signatures that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Choose quickly. Choose wisely. When your time ends, we will return for your answer. If you have chosen submission, your integration into the hegemony will begin. If you have chosen poorly, the voice trailed off, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. Across the world, people looked up at the ships and understood. These beings had done this before. Many times. They spoke with the confidence of those who had never been refused. We are patient. We are inevitable. We are the future of all thinking life in this galaxy. 72 hours. The transmission ended. The ships remained. In the UN building, President Williams stood slowly. Around him, his fellow leaders began to speak at once. Some wanted to negotiate. Others demanded immediate surrender. A few talked of fighting, but their voices were quiet and uncertain. Quiet, Williams shouted. The room fell silent. We need to understand what we're dealing with. General Morrison, head of NATO forces, pulled up tactical displays on his tablet. Our satellites show over 200 ships in orbit. Each one is between 10 and 50 miles long. They're using some kind of anti-grav technology we can't even begin to understand. Their energy output is... He paused and swallowed hard. Sir, Each ship is putting out more power than our entire electrical grid. All of them combined could probably crack our planet in half. Prime Minister Nakamura of Japan leaned back in her chair. So we have no choice. We surrender and hope they treat us well. No. The voice came from Chancellor Miller of Germany. She was old, in her 70s, and she had lived through the last great war on Earth. I have seen what happens when good people bow to tyrants. It never ends well. This is different, argued President Petrov of Russia. These are aliens with technology we cannot match. This is not a human war. Every war is human if humans are fighting it, replied Williams. He turned to Admiral Torres, who had joined the meeting by video link. Admiral, what are our options? Torres was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his staff worked frantically at their stations. Honestly, sir, we have no good options. We could launch everything we have, and every missile, every ship, every weapon on Earth, we might scratch their paint. But Williams heard something in the Admiral's voice. But they seem surprised that we haven't surrendered already. Did you notice that? They've done this 400 times, and every species said yes immediately. They're not expecting a fight. Dr. Park's voice came through another video link. The energy patterns from their ship suggest they're using some kind of matter-antimatter reaction. Incredibly advanced, but the basic physics are the same. They're not gods. They're just very advanced aliens with very big guns. What are you suggesting? Asked Chen. Williams looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Some showed fear. Some showed resignation. But a few showed something else. Something that had gotten humanity this far, from caves to cities to the edge of space. Anger. They gave us 72 hours, he said slowly. That means they expect us to think about it, to debate, to eventually choose surrender like everyone else has. And, prompted Nakamura. Williams walked to the window and looked up at the alien ship. Its shadow covered his reflection, but he could still see his own eyes. They were not the eyes of a man ready to kneel. I think they're going to be disappointed. Across the world, the same conversation was happening in 1,000 places, in military bunkers and government buildings, around family dinner tables and in university classrooms. Humanity had been given a choice between slavery and death. Most species, it seemed, chose slavery. But humanity had always been different. Humanity had always been stubborn. The clock began to tick down toward the most important decision in human history. Outside, the alien ships waited in their perfect formation, patient and confident. They had no idea what was coming. The 72 hours ended at exactly 12 noon, Greenwich Mean Time. Admiral Torres stood in the command center of the USS Defiance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with grim determination. Every screen showed the same thing: alien ships moving into attack positions above Earth. The broadcast came at 12:01. Your time has ended. You have chosen poorly. The voice was the same as before, cold and mechanical. But now there was something new in it. Disappointment, perhaps, or maybe surprise. No species has ever refused our offer twice. You are either very brave or very foolish. We suspect the latter. President Williams stood in the emergency bunker beneath Washington, D.C. Around him, the leaders of Earth waited for what came next. The decision had been made. Every nation on Earth had voted. The result was not even close. Humanity refused to bow. Your resistance will be brief. We will demonstrate our power, and you will surrender. This is how it has always been. The first attack came without warning. High above the Pacific Ocean, one of the alien ships fired a single beam of blue light. The beam struck the uninhabited island of Tuvalu and erased it from existence. Where there had been land and trees and beaches, there was now only boiling water. The island was simply gone. That was your first lesson, the alien voice announced. Surrender now and no more of your world will be harmed. The response came from Admiral Torres himself. Every radio and television on Earth carried his words. This is Admiral Miguel Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your demonstration. Here is ours. The human fleet had been waiting. 67 ships, from massive battle cruisers to tiny fighters. Everything humanity could build, steal, or convert in 3 days. They rose from the oceans and launched from hidden bases around the world. The aliens watched with what could only be described as amusement. Your vessels are primitive. Your weapons are crude. You cannot hope to damage our ships. The first wave of human missiles reached the alien fleet 30 seconds later. Nuclear warheads exploded in brilliant flashes against alien hulls. Antimatter torpedoes, humanity's newest and most dangerous weapons, detonated in chains of impossible fire. Railgun slugs accelerated to incredible speeds, hammered into alien armor. For a moment, space around Earth lit up like a second sun. When the light faded, the alien ships remained. Their hulls showed scorch marks and small craters, but they were still there. Still intact. Still dangerous. You see? The alien voice said. You are children playing with fire. Stand down before you hurt yourselves. That was when Captain Sarah Chen of the destroyer Yamato did something no alien in the galaxy expected. She laughed. Hurt ourselves? Chen's voice carried across every communication channel. You misunderstand something very important about humans. Her ship accelerated toward the nearest alien vessel, engines pushed far beyond safe limits. Behind her, the rest of the human fleet followed. We don't fight to win. We fight because we refuse to lose. The second wave of attacks was different. Instead of trying to destroy the alien ships, the humans aimed for specific targets: weapon ports, sensor arrays, engine nacelles. They had studied the aliens for 3 days, and they had learned. The alien ship Yamato was targeting fired back. Its beam weapons sliced through the destroyer's armor like paper. The ship began to die, its hull cracking open to space. Chen never slowed down. All hands prepare for ramming speed. The Yamato struck the alien ship at nearly the speed of light. The explosion that followed was visible from the surface of the moon. When it cleared, both ships were gone. For the first time in their recorded history, the Black Armada had lost a vessel in combat. The silence that followed lasted exactly 17 seconds. Then the aliens began to fire in earnest. Beam weapons lanced down from orbit, targeting military bases and government buildings. The humans had expected this. Deep underground, in bunkers built during humanity's coldest war, millions of people waited in the dark. But humanity did not simply hide. From concealed positions around the world, hidden weapons opened fire. Particle beam cannons built into mountainsides, missile silos disguised as office buildings, orbital defense platforms that had been disguised as communication satellites. Humanity had spent 3 days preparing for this war. Every trick, every deception, every desperate plan they could think of. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to hurt the aliens, and hurting them was something no species had ever done before. Above Earth, alien commanders spoke in languages humanity could not understand. Their perfect formations began to waver. Ships moved out of position, seeking better angles of attack. Some pulled back entirely, unwilling to risk the fate of their destroyed comrade. In his bunker, President Williams watched the tactical displays. Humanity was losing, that much was clear. But they were making the aliens pay for every victory. Sir, his aide whispered, we're picking up alien communications. They're arguing. On screens around the world, the battle continued. Human ships died in brilliant explosions. Alien vessels pressed their attack, methodical and overwhelming. But for every human ship destroyed, the aliens paid a price: damaged hulls, destroyed weapons, and something else. Dr. Park worked frantically in her underground laboratory, analyzing every piece of alien technology she could find. Fragments from destroyed ships, energy readings from their weapons, anything that might give humanity an edge. They're not used to this, she told her team. Look at their attack patterns. They're designed for fighting enemies who give up after the first demonstration. They don't know how to fight someone who keeps coming. Above them, the battle raged on. Human pilots flew suicide runs against ships the size of cities. Ground forces fired weapons that barely scratched alien armor. Space stations converted into bombs rammed alien vessels at full speed. It was not a battle any military academy would teach. It was not a battle any sane species would fight. It was a human battle. By the end of the first day, half the human fleet was gone. A dozen cities lay in ruins. Millions of people were dead or missing. But 3 alien ships had been destroyed. The second day was worse. The aliens stopped holding back. They pounded human positions with weapons that turned mountains into glass. They hunted down every human ship they could find and destroyed it. But still, humanity fought on. On the third day, something changed in the alien transmissions. "Your species is insane," the mechanical voice announced. "No rational beings would continue this hopeless resistance." Admiral Torres, now commanding from a hidden base in Antarctica, gave humanity's reply. "You're right, we are insane, but we're also free." That night, as fires burned across the Earth and alien ships patrolled a sky full of debris, something happened that would change the galaxy forever. Deep in space, far from Earth, an alien communications array picked up a transmission. It was brief, just a few seconds long, but it was heard on 1,000 worlds. A human voice speaking words that no galactic citizen had ever heard directed at the Black Armada. "This is Earth. We do not surrender. We do not bow. Come and take us if you can." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had known only peace and submission for 10,000 years, beings looked up at their own skies and wondered, what would it feel like to say no? The war for Earth was just beginning, but already something else was starting. The galaxy was waking up. 6 months after the first shots were fired, Earth was a world at war. The surface was scarred with craters where alien beams had struck. Entire cities lay in ruins. The sky was gray with smoke and ash that never seemed to clear. But in the deep places, in caves and tunnels and bunkers carved from solid rock, humanity endured, and humanity built. In a converted subway tunnel beneath what used to be London, factory workers assembled weapons by the light of emergency lamps. The assembly line never stopped. Day and night, human hands put together missiles and railgun slugs and the strange new weapons that Dr. Park's teams had developed. "Production is up 12% this week," reported Elena Vasquez, the factory supervisor. She had been a teacher before the war. Now she helped build the tools that kept humanity alive. Above ground, the rumble of alien patrol ships was constant. But the aliens had learned to be careful. They no longer flew low over human cities. Too many of their vessels had been brought down by surface-to-air missiles hidden in ruined buildings. Admiral Torres reviewed the latest reports from his new command center, built into a salt mine 2 miles underground. The news was not good. Humanity was losing ships faster than they could build them. But they were also learning. "The aliens have 3 main ship types," explained Captain Morrison, Torres's new intelligence officer. "The big ones are command ships, heavily armored but slow. The medium ones are their main fighters, fast and well armed. The small ones are scouts and patrol boats." "Weaknesses?" Torres asked. "The command ships can't maneuver well in planetary atmosphere. Too much mass. The medium ships have a blind spot directly behind their main engines. And the scout ships?" Morrison smiled grimly. "The scout ships have weak hull plating around their sensor arrays." It was not much, but humans had always been good at finding weak spots. The war had changed both sides. Humanity fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They used tactics that made alien commanders pause in confusion. Human pilots would ram enemy ships rather than retreat. Human soldiers would detonate nuclear charges in their own positions to deny territory to the enemy. Human engineers built weapons that were as dangerous to their users as to their targets. It was warfare without rules, without honor, without mercy. The aliens called it barbaric. Humans called it Tuesday. In the hegemony fleet, Admiral Kethavar studied the latest battle reports with growing unease. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns across 30 worlds. He had brought peace to species that had never known war. He had ended conflicts that had raged for centuries. He had never seen anything like the humans. "They converted a hospital ship into a suicide bomber," his aide reported. "When we tried to board it to provide medical aid to their wounded, it detonated. The explosion destroyed 2 of our cruisers." Cathvar clicked his mandibles in frustration. "That violates every law of civilized warfare. Sir, I don't think they care about our laws. That was the problem. Every species the hegemony had ever encountered fought according to certain rules. You did not target civilians. You did not destroy infrastructure unnecessarily. You certainly did not sacrifice your own forces just to deny victory to the enemy. Humans did all of these things as standard practice." "What about the gas they released in the Beijing ruins?" Kethavar asked. "Chemical analysis complete, sir. It's a modified version of their own industrial waste. highly toxic to our respiratory systems. 3 full companies were forced to retreat. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. Red dots marked human resistance cells across the planet. There were hundreds of them. Every time the hegemony destroyed one, 2 more appeared. They're using their own pollution as a weapon? Yes, sir. They've also weaponized their waste disposal systems, their communication networks, and apparently their food preparation facilities. Yesterday, a team of our soldiers became ill after eating what they thought was abandoned human food. The Admiral's aide paused. It was actually a carefully prepared biological agent designed to target our digestive systems. This was not how wars were supposed to go. The hegemony would arrive, demonstrate their superior technology, and the enemy would surrender. Clean, simple, civilized. But humans were not civilized. On Earth, the resistance had organized into cells that operated independently. If one was discovered, the others continued fighting. They communicated through methods the aliens could not intercept. Runners carrying messages through underground tunnels, coded signals hidden in radio static, even trained animals carrying supplies between bases. Marcus Webb had been a car mechanic before the war. Now he led a cell of 23 fighters in the ruins of Detroit. They specialized in ambushing alien patrols. Remember, he told his team as they prepared for their next mission, we're not trying to win, we're trying to make them bleed. The ambush was textbook human tactics. Wait until the alien patrol entered the kill zone. Hit them with everything at once. Retreat before reinforcements arrived. Leave behind enough damage to make the next patrol think twice. The alien patrol consisted of 6 soldiers in powered armor and 1 lightly armored transport. Against human weapons, they should have been invulnerable. Should have been. Webb's team had learned that alien armor had weak joints, that their sensors could be confused by simple electronic interference, that their weapons were designed for long-range combat and were less effective in close quarters. The ambush lasted 47 seconds. When it was over, 6 alien soldiers were dead and their transport was burning. Webb's team had lost 2 people, but they had achieved their goal. They had made the aliens afraid. Similar scenes played out across the world. In the Amazon, human fighters used the jungle to conceal bases that appeared on no map. In the Himalayas, resistance cells operated from caves at altitudes where alien technology struggled to function. In the ruins of major cities, humans turned the rubble into fortresses. The aliens controlled the air and space around Earth, but they were learning that controlling the ground was much harder. We're receiving communications from hegemony ships, reported. Communications Officer Santos from her station deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. They're arguing about tactics. President Williams, now governing from a bunker that had once stored nuclear waste, leaned forward. What kind of arguments? Some want to increase the bombardment. Others want to try negotiation again. And sir, Santos paused. Some are suggesting they withdraw entirely. That was new. For the first time since the war began, humanity heard doubt in alien voices. The doubt was spreading beyond Earth. In the outer system, near Jupiter, a human deep space monitoring station picked up transmissions between alien ships. The crew was small, just 6 people, but they had managed to stay hidden for months. This is interesting, muttered Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's xenolinguist. She had been working to decode alien communications since the war began. They're receiving messages from other parts of the galaxy. What kind of messages? Asked Station Commander Price. Requests for information about Earth. Other hegemony fleets want to know why this campaign is taking so long. Kim frowned at her screens. And, sir, some of the requests sound urgent. The war for Earth was supposed to have ended in days. Instead, it had dragged on for months with no end in sight. Across the galaxy, other subject species were beginning to ask questions. If the mighty Black Armada could not quickly defeat one primitive world, perhaps they were not as invincible as they claimed. On the planet Xerion, in a system far from Earth, a being named Talmesh worked in the mines that fed the hegemony war machine. He had never heard of humans before the war began, but now whispered stories reached even his deep tunnels, stories of a species that refused to surrender, that fought impossible odds and somehow survived, that said no to the hegemony and meant it. Talmesh looked up at the guards watching his work crew and wondered what would happen if he simply stopped working. He was not brave enough to try. Not yet. But the thought was there. Back on Earth, the war ground on. Humans adapted to their new reality with the same stubborn flexibility that had carried them from caves to cities to stars. Children learned to recognize the sound of alien engines. Workers built weapons in hidden factories. Scientists developed new ways to kill beings they had never seen before. It was not the future anyone had dreamed of, but it was their future, bought with blood and paid for with lives, and most importantly, it was free. Admiral Torres stood in his command center and watched the tactical display. Red markers showed human positions under attack. Blue markers showed alien forces moving to new targets. It was a map of a war that logic said humanity could not win. But humans had never been particularly logical. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we're picking up something interesting from the alien fleet." "What now?" "They're positioning ships for what looks like a major assault." "But sir, they're also broadcasting a new message." Torres pulled up the communication on his screen. The alien voice was the same as always, cold and mechanical. But underneath the translation he could hear something new. Frustration. "People of Earth, your resistance has continued longer than anticipated. We offer you one final chance for surrender. Accept integration into the hegemony, and the bombardment will cease." Torres smiled grimly. 6 months ago, the aliens had demanded immediate surrender. Now they were offering negotiations. The news traveled at the speed of light across the galaxy. On the mining world of Kurlos, deep in hegemony space, Supervisor Zenth received the latest reports from Earth with growing disbelief. The humans were still fighting. After 8 months of bombardment occupation attempts and demonstrations of superior firepower, the stubborn species from Sol refused to surrender. This was not how things worked. Zenth pulled up the archived files on previous hegemony conquests. Species after species had fallen into line within days of first contact. Some had tried brief resistance, but none had lasted more than a few weeks. The humans had been fighting for 8 months and showed no signs of stopping. "Worker productivity is down 17% this quarter," his aide reported. "The Kurlosian miners are asking questions about the Earth situation." Zenth's scales rippled with annoyance. "What kind of questions?" "They want to know why the humans are still fighting. They're asking if the hegemony is truly as powerful as they claim." In the mines below, Talmesh and his work crew had indeed been talking. Word spread quickly among beings who spent their lives in darkness. News from Earth reached them through hegemony communication networks, through guards who spoke too freely, through the simple mathematics of supply shipments that kept being redirected to the war effort. "They destroyed another hegemony battle group yesterday," whispered Kreen, a younger miner who worked the deep shafts. "The humans used some kind of new weapon, turned 3 heavy cruisers into scrap metal." Talmesh said nothing, but his hands moved more slowly at his work. Around him, other miners slowed their pace as well. It was not deliberate rebellion, not yet. But it was the first crack in a foundation that had seemed unbreakable. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. On factory worlds, agricultural planets, research stations, and military bases. The hegemony's greatest strength had always been the certainty that resistance was futile. That certainty was cracking. On Earth, the war had settled into a grim pattern. The aliens controlled orbit and most of the surface. Humans controlled the underground and the spaces between alien patrols. It was not victory, but it was survival. And survival for humans was enough. Dr. Park worked in her new laboratory, carved from solid bedrock beneath the ruins of Geneva. Her team had grown from 6 scientists to 60, all working on the same project, understanding alien technology well enough to turn it against its creators. "We've made a breakthrough with their power systems," she announced to her assembled researchers. "The antimatter containment fields can be disrupted with a specific frequency pulse." Her assistant, Dr. Chen, looked up from his calculations. "How specific?" "Very. But if we can get close enough to broadcast the frequency, their ships will lose power completely. Maybe even trigger containment failure." It was a long shot. It would require getting human forces close to alien ships, which meant accepting massive casualties. But it was a chance to hurt the invaders in a way they would not expect. Above ground, the latest alien assault was grinding forward through the ruins of Berlin. Hegemony troops moved carefully through the rubble, checking every hiding place for human fighters. They had learned to be cautious. Too many of their soldiers had died to traps, ambushes, and weapons that violated every law of civilized warfare. Commander Veltar led the assault from his command vehicle, A heavily armored transport that could survive anything the humans might throw at it. At least that was the theory. The explosion came from below. Humans had spent weeks tunneling under the street, placing explosives beneath the route they knew the aliens would take. The blast flipped the command vehicle over and left it burning in a crater 20 feet deep. Veltar survived, but barely. As his rescue team pulled him from the wreckage, he could hear human voices in the rubble around them, laughing. They were actually laughing at him. Tactical assessment, he demanded as medics worked on his injuries. We control the immediate area, his aide reported, but the humans have withdrawn to secondary positions. They're already preparing the next ambush. How many did we kill? Unknown, sir. They recovered their dead and wounded before retreating. That was another thing that puzzled the hegemony forces. Most species would abandon their casualties to save the living. Humans risked everything to recover bodies that could no longer fight. It made no tactical sense. But it meant that every human death cost the aliens dearly, because other humans would fight twice as hard to avenge their fallen. The ripple effects were spreading beyond military concerns. In the hegemony capital, Chancellor Mordak faced questions from the Galactic Council for the first time in centuries. Representatives from dozens of member species demanded answers about the Earth campaign. Why has a single primitive world been able to resist for so long? Asked Councillor Thith of the Altarian Union. Our people are asking if the hegemony has grown weak. Mordak's response was calm and measured, but privately he was concerned. The humans had done something no enemy had ever managed. They had made the hegemony look vulnerable. The resistance will be crushed, he assured the council. It is merely taking longer than anticipated. But even as he spoke, reports arrived of new problems. Supply convoys to the Earth fleet were being harassed by unknown attackers. Communication relays were suffering mysterious failures. 3 different worlds had reported minor sabotage incidents that looked suspiciously like human tactics. The infection was spreading. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, factory worker Halvin made a mistake while assembling components for hegemony warships. It was a small mistake, barely noticeable. The part would pass inspection and be installed in an alien vessel, where it would fail at exactly the wrong moment. Halvin told himself it was an accident. But deep in his mind, he knew better. He had heard the stories from Earth. He knew that somewhere, beings like himself were saying no to the hegemony, and if they could say no, maybe he could make small mistakes. Maybe they all could. The human resistance had evolved beyond simple military opposition. They had become something more dangerous, an idea. The idea that submission was not inevitable, that the mighty could be challenged, that freedom was worth dying for. Colonel Sarah Martinez commanded the resistance cell operating in the ruins of Mexico City. Her forces numbered barely 300 fighters, armed with scavenged weapons and homemade explosives. Against them, the aliens had deployed 2 full battalions and air support. On paper, it was no contest, but humans had never been good at reading papers. Intelligence reports that the aliens are pulling forces from other sectors, her communications officer reported. They're having to reinforce their positions here because of our raids. Martinez smiled grimly. Every alien soldier tied down fighting humans was one less soldier available to threaten other worlds. Even if her cell was eventually destroyed, they were serving a larger purpose. They were making the hegemony spread their forces thin. In space around Earth, the alien fleet had grown to nearly 500 ships. It was the largest force the hegemony had ever assembled for a single campaign. Ships had been pulled from patrol duties across the galaxy, leaving other systems with reduced security. Admiral Kethvar commanded this massive fleet with growing frustration. He had enough firepower to crack planets, but the humans refused to give him targets worthy of such weapons. They hid underground, struck without warning, and melted away before he could respond. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving priority transmissions from Hegemony Command. The Zerion mining complex has suffered a complete work stoppage. The workers are refusing to enter the mines. Kethvar felt his scales tighten with stress. Have they given reasons? They're demanding news about the Earth campaign. They want to know when it will end. For the first time in hegemony history, subject species were making demands of their rulers. The very concept was alien to everything the Galactic Order represented, and it was spreading. On Kurlos, Talmesh finally found the courage he had been looking for. When the morning work siren sounded, he remained in his quarters. Around him, other miners made the same choice. They did not shout defiance or make speeches. They simply stopped working. By the end of the day, productivity on 17 different worlds had dropped below acceptable levels. The hegemony's carefully maintained economic system was beginning to stutter, all because a species of primitive apes had refused to surrender. Back on Earth, President Williams received reports from around the globe. The news was mixed. Humanity was still losing ground, still suffering casualties that could not be replaced. But they were also accomplishing something unprecedented. Intercepted alien communications suggest unrest on 43 hegemony worlds, his intelligence chief reported. Work slowdowns, minor sabotage, and what they're calling attitude problems among subject populations. Williams nodded slowly. This was what they had hoped for, dreamed of during the darkest days of the bombardment. The war for Earth was becoming something larger. It was becoming a war for the galaxy. In her deep laboratory, Dr. Park made final adjustments to the frequency generator that could disrupt alien power systems. It was ready for field testing. The device was small enough to carry, powerful enough to affect ships in orbit. All they needed was someone willing to get close enough to use it. Volunteers stepped forward immediately. The decision was made in the deepest halls of the hegemony capital, in chambers that had not seen debate for 1,000 years. Chancellor Mordak stood before the assembled Galactic Council, his ancient face grave with the weight of what he was about to announce. Around him, representatives from dozens of species waited in silence. They all knew what was coming. The Earth problem has grown beyond acceptable parameters, he began. Rebellion spreads to 17 worlds. Production quotas are failing across 3 sectors. The cost of maintaining order approaches critical levels. Councillor Thith leaned forward in his seat. What are you proposing, Chancellor? Complete sterilization of the Sol system, total elimination of the human species. We will make an example that will end this infection forever. The chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of hegemony rule, only twice had they resorted to complete genocide. Both times the target species had been wiped from existence so thoroughly that only the hegemony leadership even remembered they had existed. But those species had been small, isolated, and technologically primitive. The humans were none of these things. They had spread to multiple worlds before first contact. Some of their colonies lay beyond hegemony space. The costs, began another counselor, will be acceptable. Mordak cut him off. We will redirect the entire Centauri fleet to Sol. 800 ships. We will crack their planet and sterilize their colonies. When we are finished, there will be no trace that humanity ever existed. On Earth, deep in the command bunkers, Admiral Torres received the intelligence report with grim satisfaction. The massive alien fleet approaching from outside the solar system was exactly what they had been waiting for. How long until they arrive? He asked. 72 hours, reported his tactical officer. 800 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. Sir, they're bringing enough firepower to shatter planets. Torres nodded. Around him, his staff worked with the calm efficiency of people who had accepted their fate months ago. They were going to die. That had never been in question. The only question was how much damage they could inflict on their way out. Signal all units. Operation Last Stand is now active. Across the solar system, hidden installations began powering up systems that had been built in secret over the past year. Humanity had known this moment would come. They had prepared for it. The preparations were magnificent and terrible. Dr. Park stood in the primary control chamber of Installation Omega, built into the asteroid Ceres. Around her, technicians made final adjustments to the most ambitious weapons project in human history. Antimatter production at maximum, reported her chief engineer. All mining operations shifted to weapons manufacturing. We have enough material to arm every platform in the system. The platforms were humanity's final gift to their alien oppressors, disguised as mining stations, communication relays, and scientific outposts. They dotted the solar system from Mercury to Pluto. Each one carried enough antimatter to vaporize a city. Together, they carried enough to vaporize a fleet. Dr. Park, her communications officer, called. We're receiving final transmissions from Earth. The message was from President Williams, broadcast from the deepest bunker on the planet. His voice was steady, but she could hear the weight of history in his words. To all human forces, wherever you may be, the enemy comes to finish what they started. They believe that by destroying our world, they can destroy our spirit. They are wrong. Today we show the galaxy what it means to be human. Today, we choose how our story ends. The transmission continued with target assignments, tactical updates, and final orders. But the real message was simpler. Die well. Take them with you. The hegemony fleet entered the solar system with confidence born of overwhelming superiority. Admiral Thekmar commanded from the flagship Dominion, a vessel so large it carried its own shipyards. He had overseen 3 planetary sterilizations in his career. This would be his 4th and his last. Sensor readings? He asked as his fleet took position. The humans have approximately 50 vessels in system, scattered among the outer planets. Minimal defensive installations detected. This will be a simple extermination. Thekmar studied the tactical display. The human ships were tiny compared to his dreadnoughts. Their weapons were primitive. Their armor was virtually non-existent. Begin the bombardment. Target their homeworld first. Let the colonies watch their birthplace die. The first wave of planet-killer missiles launched from the hegemony fleet. Weapons designed to crack continental shelves and boil oceans streaked toward Earth. The humans had no defense against such power. They didn't need defense. They had something better. Revenge. Dr. Park watched the enemy missiles approach on her screens. At her side, the weapon control system waited for her command. One word would trigger the largest coordinated attack in human history. She thought of her daughter, who had died in the bombardment of Tokyo. She thought of her colleagues, working to the end in laboratories that might not exist in an hour. She thought of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. Execute, she said quietly. Across the solar system, hidden platforms revealed themselves. What the aliens had dismissed as civilian infrastructure suddenly blazed with weapons fire. Antimatter warheads, accelerated by magnetic launchers to incredible speeds, converged on the alien fleet from every direction. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. The first impacts came without warning. Hegemony ships vanished in flashes of pure energy, as antimatter met matter and annihilated both. The careful formations of the alien fleet dissolved into chaos as captains realized they were surrounded by hidden enemies. Impossible, Thekmar roared. Where are these weapons coming from? His tactical officer's voice was high with panic. Everywhere, sir. The asteroids, the moons, the orbital platforms, they're all armed. The flagship Dominion shuddered as antimatter charges detonated against its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems overloaded and failed. Return fire. Destroy everything! But there was nothing to target. The human weapons were hidden in places the aliens had never thought to check. Mining facilities that were actually missile launchers. Communication arrays that were actually particle beam cannons. Scientific stations that were actually antimatter factories. Humanity had spent a year preparing for this moment. They had sacrificed everything to build weapons that could hurt their enemies. They had turned their homes, their infrastructure, their entire civilization into one massive trap, and now it was springing shut. Captain Maria Santos guided her ship, the last surviving destroyer in the human fleet, through the chaos of the battle. Around her, alien dreadnoughts died in explosions visible from Earth. Her small vessel dodged between the giants, targeting command ships and support vessels. Hull breach on Deck 7, her engineer reported. We're losing atmosphere. Seal it off. How many antimatter torpedoes do we have left? 3, Captain. Santos looked at the tactical display. The largest alien ship, their flagship, was pulling back from the battle. Its shields were damaged but still functional. If it escaped, it would carry word of human capabilities back to the hegemony. That could not be allowed. All hands, this is the captain. Set course for the enemy flagship. Ramming speed. Her crew responded without hesitation. They had known this moment would come. They had all volunteered for it. The destroyer accelerated toward the massive alien vessel, its engines pushed beyond safe limits. Antimatter torpedoes fired at point-blank range, opening holes in the enemy's armor. Then the ship itself struck, carrying its remaining antimatter stores deep into the alien hull. The explosion lit up the solar system. Admiral Thekmar died without understanding what had happened. His flagship, his fleet, his certainty and hegemony superiority, all were consumed in the fire of human determination. But the humans paid a price for their victory. Earth died that day. The alien planet-killer missiles reached their target despite the desperate defense. Continents cracked. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere burned away in sheets of fire. Humanity's birthworld was gone. In her final moments, Dr. Park watched the readings from her homeworld with tears streaming down her face. The planet where her species had evolved, where they had learned to dream and build and reach for the stars, was being murdered. But they had not died quietly. The battle ended with both fleets destroyed. 800 alien ships reduced to debris, 50 human vessels gone, along with every hidden weapons platform in the system. The solar system had become a graveyard, but the destruction was not complete. On the edge of the system, a small communications array had survived the battle. Automated systems activated, broadcasting a simple message across every frequency the galaxy could hear. "This is Sul. We are dying, but we are not defeated. We chose this. We chose to fight rather than kneel. Remember us. Remember that freedom is worth any price." The message repeated for 6 hours before the array finally failed, but 6 hours was enough. Across the galaxy, on worlds where rebellion simmered and spirits yearned for freedom, beings heard humanity's final words. They learned that the mighty Black Armada could be destroyed. They learned that no oppressor was invincible. Most importantly, they learned what it sounded like when someone chose death over slavery.